Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. So today I am back to do a slightly weird video, not one that I've really done before. I mean, we've done tier ranking videos before, but not like this. And it was to talk about a topic that I am fairly fascinated by. It takes a lot of my brain space, which is literary aunts and uncles, and basically their bonds with their respective niece, nephew, nibbling. As I've mentioned previously on my channel, I am an aunt myself. I am the auntie to a little 5-year-old girl and I absolutely adore her. I've loved her since I knew that she was on her way, and so now as a reader I've become very invested in seeing portrayals of aunts and uncles and whether or not they are good, healthy, or if they are absolutely despicable and horrible. And I found myself increasingly becoming quite affronted and offended, not at the portrayal of aunts and uncles, but the whole notion that you would ever mistreat your niece or nephew. Like, it just enrages me. And I feel like people do talk about like literary parents and literary siblings, but not very often about their aunts and uncles, because I think the bond between an aunt and uncle and their niece nephew is one that can be really, really strong if the work is put in. But typically I think the stereotype is that they are less authoritative than the parents and maybe a little bit more fun. But then I think in other literary depictions it can often be that because there isn't that strong blood tie in the same way as a parent, that maybe aunts and uncles care a bit less. And so you often see like dastardly villainous aunts and uncles. And yeah, I thought I'd just have a space to talk about them here today. And yeah, I'm going to get the tier ranking system set up again. Always a disaster when I do this. So here we have my little tier list of all of the different aunts and uncles that I've come across in fiction. I've realised very quickly that I didn't include Auntie M from The Wizard of Oz, and I think that's purely because I've never actually read The Wizard of Oz, so it just didn't come to mind. I also have a few like actual historical aunts and uncles on here, but I'm justifying it because they have appeared in either fiction or non-fiction, so therefore they are still literary in my mind. And we have 5 different tiers. The top, the best of the best, being more of a parent than the actual parents. Aunts and uncles who basically are good replacements to the parents who are often neglectful. Maybe the aunts and uncles actually give more wisdom, more care, more advice, or just generally good eggs all round. Then we have well-meaning but needs work. Maybe they are like good intentioned positive people, but maybe they mess up sometimes. Then we have third tier down, you tried, I guess. You know, maybe they don't do anything horrible, but they don't do anything great for their nieces and nephews. Second from the bottom is cupboard under the stairs. So basically aunts and uncles who maybe they do take in their niece and nephew, but they're not treating them very well, but not quite as villainous and dastardly as kills them in a tower and then makes it look like an accident. No, I will not apologise, Richard III fans. I said what I said. And we are starting off with an absolute doozy. We have Aunt Reed from Jane Eyre, and I think if there was ever a candidate for cupboard under the stairs, it's Aunt Reed. You know, she doesn't go as far as to try and kill Jane, but she doesn't treat her very well either. And I will give her a little bit of credit for the fact that she does actually confess to Jane the full extent of her mistreatment and the fact that she did hide her existence from her uncle. It's always so baffling when I read Jane Eyre because it seems like her uncle Reed, who had died before the events of the book, was actually really, really nice. So who knows what happened to Aunt Reed. Another one that is a pretty bad aunt is Aunt Lysa Arryn from A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones. Now, I'm not sure whether to put her on cupboard under the stairs or kills him in a tower and makes it look like an accident, because she definitely tried. She tried with Sansa to kill her, but she didn't actually succeed. No, I think she is just that bad. I feel like even if you didn't succeed, trying to shove your niece through the moon door, it is pretty bad. Then next up, an actually good example of an aunt or an uncle is Aunt Thea from When a Scot Ties the Knot. Eccentric Aunt Thea, who ends up giving her niece like the sanctuary that she needs in the form of a castle in Scotland in order to escape from her overbearing father and stepmother who are just wanting her to get married, and being supportive all the way, like more of a parent than the actual parents. Then once again we're back to the bad aunts and uncles. I know I said mainly literary, but I did have to include Scot. I'm also using him as like Claudius from Hamlet, and yeah, if there is anybody who would kill their nephew in a tower and make it look like an accident, I think it's Scot. Killed the father, tried to kill son, tried to frame him for his father's murder. Like, terrible, but an incredible villain song, it has to be said. Then we have great uncle Matthew from Ballet Shoes, and this is the epitome of you tried, I guess. You know, he did give the Fossil sisters a place to stay, but did he do any of that child rearing? No, he did not. You know, so not a terrible great uncle, but far from the best. Another one is, I can't remember this uncle's name, but the uncle from Great Circle. I don't know if I'd put him cupboard under the stairs or you tried, I guess, because he is definitely like quite neglectful of the main character. I think I'm gonna go for you tried, like the lower end of you tried, I guess. He just seems very dismissive, doesn't seem to care very much. Great uncle Matthew is definitely a better uncle, even though he is absent for most of the book. But yeah, Great Circle just doesn't seem particularly interested. Then we have A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting, an aunt who, after the mother dies, ends up putting up these two sisters in her home, being really supportive of their romantic endeavours. I would say more of a parent than the actual parents. We don't get a lot of time on the page with her, but she is pretty good. Then we have The Uncle from Pandora by Susan Stokes-Chapman, pretty exploitative of his niece. I don't know if I would go as far as to say that he would kill her in a tower and make it look like an accident, but definitely cupboard under the stairs. Not very supportive, just uses her for her parents' shop. And yeah, I feel like he wouldn't care if she lived or died, but probably wouldn't do anything himself. Then we have Uncle Monty from A Series of Unfortunate Events. This, once again, the epitome of well-meaning but needs work. I actually couldn't finish the second book in A Series of Unfortunate Events for the longest time because I had seen the film with Jim Carrey, and so I knew what happened to Uncle Monty, and I thought he was so lovely. Like, if I had have had my way, the Series of Unfortunate Events would have just ended like a third of the way through the second book. He was just so lovely and really supportive of the three Baudelaire orphans, really accommodated for them and catered for their individual talents, but definitely had an issue with listening to them when they voiced their concerns that Count Olaf was actually there in disguise. So, you know, well-meaning but needs work. Then we have one of our historical uncles, and this is Thomas Howard, who was the uncle to Anne Boleyn and to Catherine Howard. And while I wouldn't say he is quite as bad as kills them in a tower and makes it look like an accident, like, I mean, he did basically sentence his niece to death, so I'm not sure where to put him. You know, he's not doing the murder job himself, but he's also not supporting his nieces in any sort of way. I don't know what to do with him. I think for now we're gonna go lower end of cupboard under the stairs. Because he is pretty despicable, but I don't know if he would do the job himself. Tudor historians, tell me if you think I'm wrong with that. We then have Uncle Ted from My Uncle is a Hunkle by Lauren Child. This is a children's series following Clarice Bean, and this is a picture book in which Uncle Ted comes to look after the children, and you know, he is great. He is the epitome of the fun uncle, but isn't the most responsible person, so definitely well-meaning but needs work. And then we have Richard III. Enough said. Ricardians, debate me in the comments. Like, I don't know how people can say that he didn't do it. Whether or not he was a good ruler, that is one thing, but like, he was the person who had the most to gain. I definitely don't understand the people who are like, no, it was Margaret Beaufort. Like, I don't understand you. I don't understand you. But still, you know, interesting figure. Then we have my least favourite, and in all of literary history, Aunt Norris. Now, while I'm pretty sure that Aunt Norris from Mansfield Park wouldn't kill Fanny and make it look like an accident, you know, she's still incredibly neglectful, incredibly abusive of her niece. So I'm going to put her cupboard under the stairs, but just know, if anybody spoke to my niece the way that Aunt Norris speaks to Fanny Price, I would not be happy. I would. We then have Ebenezer Scrooge from A Christmas Carol, one of my favourite books. I would probably say that Ebenezer would go towards Cupboard Under the Stairs at the beginning of the book, but then by the end of the book is probably going to be more on the higher end. So I'm going to say for the end of the book, Ebenezer Scrooge, we're going to put him on well-meaning but needs work. You know, definitely there are the first, like, what, 25, 30 years of his nephew's life where he doesn't care about him, and then suddenly, like, 3 ghosts come and visit him and he's, like, changed overnight. I feel like if I were his nephew, I'd be a little bit sceptical about it. But I'm hoping that he did truly change by the end of the book, and you know, I'm an optimistic person, I think he did. Then we have Count Leonato from Much Ado About Nothing. We don't really know a whole lot about Leonato and Beatrice and their uncle-aunt dynamic, but you know, I think it's fair to say that he is a good uncle. He's taken in his niece, raising her like a child, though there is the fact that he is overly invested in her love life. Seems like a pretty good guy. I'm going to put him on the top side of well-meaning but needs work. You know, overall it was probably a good thing that he meddled, but sometimes you do just have to let your nieces and nephews just go on the path that nature is intended for them. Then we have Count Olaf. Do I need to say any more? Entertaining, yes. Dastardly, villainous, one of the worst uncles that I've ever come across in fiction. Also yes. We then have another historical figure, and Anne Lister. Anne Lister the elder, definitely more of a parent than the actual parents. Incredibly supportive and kind of fearful for her niece, but at the end of the day still supportive of her, still wants the best for her. Somebody that she's able to confide in. We then have my favourite aunt and uncle in all of literature, the Gardners from Pride and Prejudice, and they are going straight to the top. As entertaining as Mr. and Mrs. Bennet are, they are definitely flawed parents. Aren't always there with like the best wisdom and advice. What the Bennets lack in that department, the gardeners more than make up for. I think also I was really charmed by them in The Other Bennet Sister, which is following Mary Bennet and her life after the events of Pride and Prejudice. And during that we see the gardeners taking her in and just really supporting her, really bringing out her confidence in herself. And I just think they're amazing. I love the gardeners. Absolutely underrated Jane Austen characters. Then we have the Dursleys from the Harry Potter series. I mean, this is what that category was meant for. Penultimate ant on this list is Aunt March from Little Women. I'm kind of struggling on whether I should go You Tried, I Guess, or Well-Meaning But Needs Work. I think I'm going to hover around the top end of You Tried, I Guess. Because while there's no doubt that she does love the March sisters, she's incredibly critical of them. She doesn't seem to be the most like emotionally supportive. Seems to be morally a little bit but you know, she did take Amy to Europe. She does seem to want the best for her nieces, but the best for them seems to be whatever she wants for them. The final aunt that is on this list is Miss Bates from Emma. Miss Bates is so incredibly funny, and I feel like she is the figure that I see the most of myself in terms of aunt style. If Emmy were writing me letters, I can guarantee that I would be going around everybody in my office and everybody in my musical theatre society, just everybody in my life, regaling and probably boring them with all of the details of the things that my nieces said. And I think it's probably the fact that she is just so over effusive that probably puts her on Well-Meaning But Needs Work. Probably needs to let her niece have her moment to shine a little bit and maybe listen to people a little bit more. But yeah, she's very well-meaning. She's a very kind, lovely person, but maybe probably isn't the person that Jane Fairfax would go to for advice. So there we go, at long last. That is my breakdown of all of the aunts and uncles. This was not an exhaustive list of all of the aunts and uncles, but just the ones that came to mind for me that I wanted to talk about today. Please let me know about any of your favourite aunts and uncles from fiction, whether they are villainous or whether they are absolute heroes. I would love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic, fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.